Okay, so welcome back. Today we're going to do a fairly brief video where we're going to talk about whether really old computer hardware is totally useless garbage or whether it might actually have some benefit to some of us in the real world. And we're going to use as an example this HP laptop you see here. It's something I got off of eBay recently for only like $80. And we're going to see what are the actual benefits and costs of this piece of hardware. And this laptop is from around 2010, 2011. So we're in 2024 now, so it's about 13, 14 years old. So this is really, really old hardware. Now, most of what you see on the internet is people who are firmly convinced that you absolutely must have the latest and greatest technology. You must, follow technology. Don't get left behind with old technology. You need to get the latest GPU and computer hardware. So what we're going to do is, rather than go by those vague generalities, we're going to do what an engineer would do. Again, I've been an electrical engineer for over 45 years. We're going to actually break that down to see what are the actual costs and benefits of old technology. And are there any benefits, or like they say, should you just trash anything that's over maybe 5 or 10 years old? Now, when I got this recently, I was honestly very surprised at the laptop. Again, it's about 14 years old. I was very surprised at it. And you might be surprised also to learn that what I'm doing right now is I am recording the screen from this laptop in real time using the same recording software that I use for my regular videos on my main computer. And it is recording using what's called OBS Studio, which is a free piece of software, the latest version used by a lot of people when they record YouTube videos. And it's actually doing that right now in real time. So what you see here is the 14-year-old laptop running Windows 10. It works fine. And it's recording what we see here. Not only is it doing that, however, it is also recording and displaying what you see here, which is real-time streaming of webcam video, actually my smartphone, streaming over my Wi-Fi to this computer and displaying this streaming video in real time while I am recording this display in real time with the video and the audio that you hear. All of this is being done at the same time on a 14-year-old laptop. Now, this is all real time. You don't see maybe before you saw some cars going by, but it's kind of quiet out there now. But this is real time streaming video, like 60 frames per second, and we're doing the recording. So again, kind of impressive that a 14-year-old laptop can do all of this at the same time. So that's something to keep in mind. But not only can it do that, but recently I downloaded the latest version of all of this software, these applications you see here, and those also run fine. So Firefox browser, VLC media player for playing media files, LibreOffice, that runs fine, installs fine. GIMP, which is an image editing software, and that works fine. Adobe Acrobat, and again this Irion webcam, which grabs the streaming video over Wi-Fi and displays it in this screen. So while a lot of people say, well, this old technology does nothing, well, in fact, it does a whole lot of stuff. However, if you are the kind of person who spends your life playing video games, this video is not for you, because a lot of the limitations of these old hardware is in the inability to do graphics. So if you're going to do video games, probably you should just ignore this video because it ain't going to work. But for the rest of us in the real world, there's a lot of things we can do with this old 14-year-old hardware that is really quite nice and quite impressive. So now let's take a look at the specifications for this 14-year-old laptop and see what we're working with and give you an idea of what you can get on the market used and how much it might cost. So this particular model is an HP EliteBook 8460p notebook, and this is a business class laptop, which is really good. It's really important that you see if you can get this if you're going to get a used laptop, because they're very well built, very easy to maintain, and generally they're kept in pretty good shape as opposed to the the kid who's got a laptop he uses to play video games and he spills Coke on it and he steps on it and pounds the keyboard when he's losing. So these are usually kept in fairly good shape. The date is May 2011, something like that. Total cost was about $80 plus $20 shipping. The BIOS it came with was dated 2011. The latest one I found and installed was 2018. It came with 8 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM, and it supports up to 16 gigabytes of DDR3, and surprisingly, you can replace that 8 gig for 16 gig for less than $20. So I'm upgrading this from 8 gigabyte to 16 gigabytes for less than $20. The CPU is an Intel Core i5-2410M with 2 cores, 4 threads, 2.3 gigahertz, not too bad. It's got this integrated graphics, Intel HD Graphics 3000, which really is old. And this is one of the reasons why it doesn't fare too well in the graphics department. So this is a big limitation if you're going to do graphics. TDP is 35 watts. Launch date is about February 2011 for that CPU. 14-inch screen, AC adapter. Now this, since it was a business class device, generally comes with activated Windows 10 Pro. And this came all activated Windows 10 Pro. I wiped the drive and then reinstalled Windows 10 Home, but it maintained the activation license. So now I've got an activated Windows 10 Home. It's got onboard Wi-Fi. It's got Ethernet plug on the back. Gigabit LAN 10, 100, 1000, if you remember that from long ago. It's got a webcam built in, 720p. And it's got a WD Blue hard disk drive, 5400 RPM, 500 gigabyte SATA drive, and very, very slow, 100 megabytes per second. Really, one thing you definitely would want to replace with a solid state drive of some sort. And it's got a bunch of I/O connectors, some USB 3, some USB 2, a USB eSATA combo port, one display port so you can hook up an external monitor, a headphone microphone. It's also got a DVD player, which is totally useless in my view. And it's got a VGA connector on the rear, again, not too useful, and an RJ45 for the Ethernet. So you can see it's got a lot of capabilities. Some of it is fairly old, but you can see the CPU is not that bad, 4 threads, 2.3 gigahertz, but the graphics is where it's really not very strong. So now let's take a look at some of the pros and cons of using old hardware like this. And we'll start out with the biggest question: why even bother? Why bother getting a very old laptop or old piece of computer hardware? Well, in this case, it can be used for a lot of things which you may or may not need. For example, you can back up your main computer in case it has hardware or software failures. So for example, if you have a main drive, your system drive on your main computer fails, you're kind of out of luck because there's no way to get on the internet and debug it or to download files. If you have a backup computer like this, you can go on the internet, you can use it to do whatever you're doing, you can debug your problems and so on. So having a backup computer is really, really nice for many, many reasons. Also, if you have important files and folders, you really should be keeping regular backups of those, and this would be a great separate device that is unaffected by your main computer. You can just store backups of your files and folders on this old computer and have it just sit there and take these files and folders, and if something happens to your main computer, you've got your important files and folders backed up or synchronized. Also, if you want to try stuff out, try out software or hardware so that it doesn't affect the main computer, you will have a separate computer to do that. So that's really nice just to try things out if you're afraid it might damage the main computer or it might not work. Also, let's say if you want to multitask and separate some processor-intensive tasks like downloading or whatever, you can have this separate computer and do some stuff on the separate computer and just let it go in the background. You know, even though it's a very slow device, or it can be slow, doesn't matter if it's working in the background because you're off working on your main computer and this can go do really slow, intensive stuff and take a long time. Also, if you're interested in learning in the engineering world, you want to learn So it's a great way to learn about laptops. I'm doing a learning how to repair laptops video series that you might want to take a look at. But it's a great way to learn about what's in a laptop and play with it and try things out and see what works. And also, if you need portability, if you've just got a desktop and you want something to be portable, having the separate laptop, inexpensive laptop, allows you to be portable and move things and go do things elsewhere. So now, what are the pros of having this very old piece of hardware, this laptop? Well, again, the cost is only $80 in my case, plus shipping. You can see what's available for you. Surprisingly, it runs the latest Windows 10 at this point. It was 22H2, runs it fine. Runs a lot of modern software, as I showed before, the latest versions of modern software. Again, business class is nice, easy to work on, strong, and so on. It supports up to 16 gigs of DDR3 RAM. In my view, 8 gigs is fine, but it's a minimum, and you want at least 8 gigs, and this you can upgrade to 16 for only less than $20 to get 16 gigabytes. Good for learning, spare parts backup, and testing. And surprisingly, it came with a lot of features. Nice CPU, it came with 8 gigs of RAM, Wi-Fi card, Ethernet, activated Windows 10. But what are the cons? What are the downsides? And of course, everything has downsides to it. The first one is we live in an age, unfortunately, where Microsoft can release an operating system and old hardware will not be compatible and it won't work with this new Windows 11. So unfortunately, again, I've been an engineer for over 45 years. This is the first time I recall having an operating system that absolutely doesn't run on old CPUs and motherboards. It's unbelievable, but this laptop, these old laptops probably will not work on Windows 11. Again, this one is close. It has TPM, Trusted Platform Module, but the CPU is not compatible, so you'd have to mess around with it. But you may have to try to install another operating system like Linux. However, another con is I tried to install Linux on a hard drive and it would not boot from that Linux hard drive. Now, as with everything in Linux, it's a huge rabbit hole. You can try and figure out some way, but it doesn't seem to like Linux. So I couldn't get it to work with Linux. Again, there's 50,000 versions of Linux, and if you're a hobbyist and you're really bored, this is a great thing to try and fix, but I couldn't get it to work with Linux, and I don't have time to worry about it. Again, you may encounter compatibility issues with Windows, Linux, and old hardware. Another issue I had is with password-protected file sharing. I put this laptop on the network using the Wi-Fi or the Ethernet with my other computers, and I could share files and folders as long as I had password protection turned off. So publicly accessible files and folders on this network, I could share them. However, as soon as I put on password protected file sharing with the same account that's on the other computers, it would not recognize the drive and I couldn't do any file sharing again. That's a rabbit hole. It could be something with the BIOS. It could be something with hardware compatibility with the old hardware. But with me, it doesn't really matter. I can just do public file sharing and I'm fine. Also, I can't run some software on this old laptop. For example, Blender. Because of the graphics requirements, you need an OpenGL 4.3 or whatever for Blender. This doesn't have it and you can't get it, so you ain't going to run Blender on this computer. Cinebench, if you want to do benchmarks for 3D graphics, it won't run. So there's definitely some software that will not work and you probably can't fix it to make it work. So be careful of what you expect with these old laptops. There are some things that aren't going to work or can be very difficult to resolve and may take a lot of time. Also, speed is a downside, of course. The original HDD is annoyingly slow and should probably be replaced with a solid-state drive. That's going to be $50 to $100 to replace it, so be prepared for that. So again, there are some issues, some cons with this, and you can come up with others, but you can't expect it to work for everything. It's probably going to have some issues. You probably can't run some software, and you may have to replace or add to some things. In my case, it didn't come with a battery, so I might have to buy, if I wanted to be portable, buy a battery. It might cost a bit. But otherwise, it's really very beneficial for some things, but you got to be careful about some of these downsides with this older equipment. So my recommendations, if you're going to look for a used piece of old equipment, see if you can get a business class device, something like an HP business class device. Those are really nice. And like I say, it's more likely it's going to be in better shape than, a personal user who throws it across the room if he's losing a video game. Also get a device, obviously, with as many included features as you can find. At least 8 gigabytes of RAM if you're going to have Windows. Have Windows 10 installed and activated. Or hopefully it has Linux installed, because if you assume you're going to be using Linux after 2025 when Windows 10 support dies, it'd be nice if they have figured out how to install Linux on it. Also, see if you can get like a Wi-Fi, AC adapter, and battery included. Probably not, because that will increase the price, but those are some recommendations I have for an old device. Okay, so here is the laptop we've been talking about, and you can see it's a Core i5 Intel Windows 7 originally from 2011, 2010, and everything works fine. I've got a USB connected portable drive, and everything, you can see Windows 10, everything's working fine. So that's it for this one. If you like any of these videos, I encourage you to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, but most of all, please let others know that we're here so we get some views. Really appreciate it. Otherwise, take care. Have a really good day. Thanks.